Fairview family, to another podcast episode, and I am here with Christian Staller. So, Christian, I actually want to begin first and foremost with you. There may be a lot of people at Fairview Church who have not met you yet because you've only been attending, you and your wife, and well, how long have you guys been attending?
Probably a little over a year.
A little over a year.
Yep.
So you're newer to the area. You're newer to Fairview Church.
That's right.
And no pressure on this podcast, and we'll talk about a little bit about what we're going to talk about in just a few moments. But in December at the members' meeting, you and Elizabeth are going to be voted in as potential members. So you're prospective members right now. So
that's right.
A lot of pressure.
You know, it all depends on how this podcast goes.
Exactly. This is kind of like a membership
this
interview.
This is a member break, make or break, huh?
That every member is going to be listening thinking, oh, that guy.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So if you want to join Fairview Church, you got to do a podcast and you're going to get through the gauntlet, right?
Could be.
Could be.
But Christian, we're going to talk about work as worship. We're going to connect those two.
Yep.
Those two, that's good Baptist alliteration right there in it. The two W's, work and worship. We're going to talk about those two, but tell the church family, tell the audience a little bit about why we're asking you, because you've got a little bit of desire and passion within these two details.
So I've never heard it described as little passion for when somebody describes me.
To be fair, and I wish Elizabeth were here to answer this.
She'd be laughing.
Would you? Yeah, you don't have any little passions in life. You're either all in or you're not at all.
Go big or go home.
Go big or go home.
Right.
And one of the areas that you go big or go home is in the work aspect of things.
There's two areas that I am big in that area. Hopefully another podcast for one of those other areas later. But yes, work is absolutely a passion. And why? 20 years ago, I got introduced when we were living in California. We've since escaped. We left that all behind us. But when I was out there about 20-some years ago, I came alongside Concordia University, one of the big universities in Southern California. And, Southern California, home of the Jesus Movement, Calvary Church, Billy Graham, everything down there was great. And I got introduced to this conference, and I went and I sat. I went, this is fantastic. I came alongside the director for the program, helped them write their vision and mission, and I was all hooked. And I said, God, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. And God said, yeah, but not now. And I was like, so I spent 30 years corporate experience of there's not a job I haven't held, from CEO all the way down to chief bottle washer, right? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter. But it was always something that I was really, I know I've been called to do and call and serve in. So when we moved here, still working as a CEO for a company in Orange County, California. And about a year into it, God said, now. I went, oh, okay. So I left that job, gave it up, and have been really working, as I like to say, a minister in the marketplace. I am passionate that Jesus spent 90% of his time in the marketplace with everyday people. And who's the marketplace? Well, it's the at-home mom, it's the government official, it's the teacher, it's the pastor, and you could be running a $1 million company. Doesn't matter. Solopreneur, entrepreneur. We are in the image of God. We are creative. We have that creative DNA. Yeah. I love that about business, and it's a passion of mine. But it's not our company, right? It's not our business. It's God's, and we'll talk about how that gets formed today.
So, work. Let's clarify our terms a little bit.
Yeah.
Work, and you made mention of Marketplace Ministries.
That's correct.
And alluded to it, but work is not just the job that's 9 to 5.
That's correct.
Marketplace ministry is not just the employee at the employer's spot or scenario. It's practically a holistic view of what we're doing.
That's right.
If you will, Monday through Saturday, outside of our time at church. So now we're including family.
That's right.
We're including work.
That's right.
How we're paying the bills.
Yep.
Hobbies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Friendships, relationships, all this. So we're kind of all comprehensive here.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So if I try to connect some of our terminology at Fairview to what we're talking about, this is where we would say missional living.
That's correct.
Taking the gospel, taking Jesus with you everywhere, every day, no matter where it is.
And 95% of the people that are sitting in the pews on Sunday are going to go somewhere on Monday. So how are we equipping them for that missional living, right? Living out that Fairview mission, which is perfect. I mean, one of the first things when we came here, we sat down and we talked to you and what's it about, and you shared that whole thing. That was one of those big check marks for me, because it wasn't just about being here on Sunday. Yeah. Right? It's, well, what are you going to do? How are we equipping the people? How do we take care of them? And you're right. It's all of those things. When we talk about the big church and, the bride of Christ and all of that, Well, who's it talking to? It's talking to everybody.
Yeah.
So work and marketplace is everybody we interact. It's when you go to the Kroger up the street or the market, the farmer's market downtown, how you interact, because you're now a reflection of who you are, which is a new creation. And when you put that in your work, whether it's treating employees, what happens when an employee loses a spouse or they're going through hardship, financial or medical or whatever? How do you do it? How do you hire? How do you let someone go?
Yeah.
Succession planning, things like that. How do you manage all of that?
Yeah, so having a biblical worldview
Exactly.
to all these areas and elements that's going to come.
Right.
Okay. All
That's
right.
right.
So how do then let's take the biblical journey, because there is a biblical journey here. This is very much solidified in Scripture for us.
100%.
We're not just coming up with these random thought processes as we sit and talk.
The first 2 chapters are pretty much workplace ministry.
Okay, so we're talking about the beginning. We're going to the beginning.
That's
Genesis introduces it to us. So
Yeah.
from the beginning, in the beginning, work is a part of creation.
That's correct.
And it's fair to say then, because it was a part of the original creation, it was good.
That's right. Absolutely.
And if it was from God, He created it, and it is for our good, then now we begin connecting work to worship then.
Absolutely.
That's a fair way to look at it.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things I do in my coaching and working with leaders and so forth is I bring what I call it the Avada mindset. And Avada is the Hebrew word that we see in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. It's about 400 some references to it. But it doesn't just mean work, but it means worship and it means service. So when we look at our work, our service, and our worship, all 3 of them is how God envisions what we are to do, right? Yeah. So the worship element is probably, to me, the strongest, because it shows up in everything we do. And you go back to the beginning. Well, the first line of the Bible, in the beginning God created. That's work, right? And he had done that before all of creation that we see in Genesis, right? In His own existence. It says in the beginning, God rested. God had worked. God had rested for all His work, and on the 7th day He rested from His work. In that same verse, work is said twice. So if God's going to rest from His work, then work is important to Him to be able to set it aside and live in that.
And so there's an element of that. You said the Hebrew word avadah.
Yes.
Did you pronounce it correctly? I don't know. I'm asking the question because Hebrew has that great guttural sound to it. I just feel like we should be spitting on our microphones when we say that word.
So, and I have to be careful in this one, and I want to be reverent to it, because the word avada, when I first started using that in my coaching, because I coach from an avada mindset. So I work with leaders, I work with owners. How are you worshiping? How are you serving? Because it affects every element of what you do in your work, and all ways of recognizing that. When I first published that's the mindset I was doing. Actually, has some very close friends of mine that are Jewish that actually took extreme offense to me using that word. And it's because the word Avodah is used in Yom Kippur services and so many of their feasts that it's a very important word. And what I tried to explain is, as a Christian, we come through Judaism. We don't come outside of it. We come through Judaism. And the importance of how they see it is just as important. And when I explained the elements of God and work, it was actually an incredible healing opportunity for my friends in the workplace that were Jewish, that understood how I was using that term. And if I'm mispronouncing it, or I'm not guttural enough, right?
Yeah,
it's like the Hebrew Bible you're showing everybody in the human hermeneutics class. It's like, nope, have no idea. I'm not going to even try.
No, I don't know if you may have been pronouncing it correctly. It's just every time I hear
used it
Hebrew,
so much, nobody's told me no.
That's right.
Let me put it that way. I'm going to stick with it.
Well, my philosophy, if you say it quickly and confidently, most people just agree with you and go along with it.
Exactly right.
So let's get back to the biblical journey. We've got the creation being where work is given to mankind.
That's right.
And it's good. We see a part of Eden being a cultivating, a working environment. And that then, and here's going to be the segue into where we're headed next, that was not a labor of work. There wasn't a negative component to it.
That's correct.
It was very positive and worshipful.
And that's the key, right? So when we look at why were we created? Yeah, we're created for a relationship with God. Absolutely, He wanted the relationship, but He wanted the relationship in the context of worship. So if God was going to go through in the 7 days and rest on the seventh, or 6 days, and rest on the seventh day, and make note of that, that was his worship in terms of his creation as well. And if we are created his image, then when we work as worship, because that's how he created us for that reason.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing.
So then Genesis 1 and 2.
And then
it comes with Genesis 3, and now we see the fall.
That's right.
Well, one of the elements that is mentioned regarding the fall is now there is a curse given to the land, given to the work in itself. It becomes labor.
That's right.
I don't know where this came from. I just like that these words were put together, and it just makes sense.
Yeah.
From Genesis 3 in the fall, the corruption of the good aspect of work, you go from joyful cultivation to sweaty frustration.
That's right. That's right.
And so I think you can visually see that detail, but that begins to explain not just the things that happen in Genesis 3, but things that happen every day right now.
Absolutely.
In our everyday lives.
Absolutely.
We have frustrations with work.
Very much so.
Very
much so.
I don't think we should get into storytelling or name calling by any means, but we all experience, and the listeners out there are experiencing, they go to work or they have the family situation or they have the scenario that presents itself that frustrations come, interruptions occur.
Right.
Things don't go as they intended. They're not treated how they want to be treated. There's so many. We could create a list of the frustrations that happen.
Absolutely. But we have to fall back on, so there's a truth and there's a lie. The truth is work is a blessing because that's how God created it.
Originally it was good.
Originally good. We live in a fallen world, in a kingdom that is not yet, right? We live in that tension.
Yes.
In that tension, we have to fall back to the biblical foundation of what work was, good. And yes, life will get in the way, our fallen nature, our own drive, whatever. We could sit here all day long and list all the issues of work that are bad. Or we can choose the biblical view to saying, God put me in this company, or he put me in this school, or I'm the postman delivering mail. And when I see somebody, a little old lady come out to get her mail, and I smile and I say, how are you? Right? That's great. It also goes into your Baptistic foundation, right? Matthew 28:19, the discipleship process. I now have a responsibility to go in, and as I'm working and leading my people that are working for me, not only do I have that stewardship responsibility to my team, but I also have an opportunity to disciple. When I work with joy, which is not always easy, right? You lose an order, you lose a sale, employee quits, you were unjustly treated, right? But in that process, if you can find that, this is an example, this is a witness, this is a testimony, this is a discipleship opportunity, now all of a sudden, or we hear this phrase quite a bit, but now all of a sudden business becomes mission. So that business as mission, or BAM concept, has been around for a long time, and it's well rooted.
So what we're talking about here is there's a way then in our fallen state to view work in a healthy manner. No matter if there's the amount of frustrations that will come, and they will most certainly come, but there is still a way to view rightly our work.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we look at, and you could look at that through our everyday walk, just trying to be good Christians, right? It is not easy sometimes, right? We are challenged and thrown at all sorts of things. Work is no different, right? So one of the things I always tell people is that when we look at the, Christ's sacrifice for us, redeeming us, he came. His sacrifice was to redeem us, but that's a half gospel. He came to redeem all of creation, because he can't come back if creation's not redeemed at the same time. So not only did he come back to redeem us individually and our salvation, but all of his original creation from day one, he needs to redeem. Then there's no evil, there's no nothing. That's when we see a New Jerusalem eventually happen. We're going to be working the rest of our lives.
Okay, so
and that's a beautiful. Then it's true worship.
All right, hold that thought on heaven and what the
Yeah.
eternal aspect of things. I think that's going to be important for us to journey into in just a moment. But
Sure.
living currently in the fallen state
Yes.
still, we need to apply redemption into the realm of our work.
That is
It's
absolutely.
fallen. That's an aspect of the fallenness we live in, and so we need to redeem our work.
Right.
Okay, some massive practical applications here.
Yes.
We understand that just thinking broadly, we'll narrow it down a little bit, but now we would say overworking can become sinful.
Becomes idolatry.
Exactly.
Yep.
Underworking can also become sinful.
Irresponsible.
Right. So
Yep.
now you have some boundaries that begin to fit this, all in the scene of redemption through Christ.
That's right.
Through his body into what we do. Again, missional living, doing all these things for the sake of Jesus. I think it's important here, you and I have talked about this, but this is where we should probably bring up, there has been, and at least in our society and culture, and I don't know about California, but I'm talking about the Bible Belt here, that at least that's where
For the
I've grown
record, I'm
up
originally
is.
from Southeast Pennsylvania. We got relocated there. We escaped.
So
No hate mail.
there's been this divide between the sacred and the secular.
So that's really important, right? And that's important that we live in. If the promise is our redemption, and the promise is our salvation, and the promise is an eternity of which we are nothing but a vapor on this earth, right? To make that choice to worship in a relationship, and that's the gospel right there.
Yeah.
Right? And everything in there is discipleship and learning and developing and all of that. But it's so important. So that I said those lies and those truths. The first lie is work as a blessing. Second or third, there's about 6 of them that I will teach on. But one of them is that there is no divide between the sacred and the secular. God sees it all as sacred, which means now when we go to work, it changes my perspective on maybe I'm just putting lug nuts on a tire every day. Or now I've got 500 people I got to worry about, and the company, if it falters, 500 people are out of their job.
Yeah.
Right? Or I've decided to take all this skill and I'm going to go out and become I'm going to start a new plumbing business. That is as sacred as the job you have. Right? It really is. And we have a responsibility to act in that.
And so we should be looking, no matter if it's the entrepreneurial starting their
That's
own
right.
business,
That's right.
no matter if it's the person who would, if you said start your own business, that would scare them to death. And we're finding in all types of categories of employment, in all types of areas that we would sometimes say this is secular and not sacred. We need to forget that terminology.
You got to wipe that out. You got to wipe that out of your brain. God created it. It is sacred.
So we're talking from Sunday to Saturday, everything in between is in the realm of being redeemed.
Thank you. If these microphones were, I'd give you a hug because it's sad that so many churches don't understand that. Right? They will put the pulpit comes first, the Sundays first, and all of that. I do a lot of coaching with pastors. It's like before we start asking people to donate more, or spend more time, or volunteer at this or whatever, are we truly taking care of them when they go out on Monday? Are we helping them exactly what we're talking about today to recognize when they walk out? Maybe after hearing this podcast that they'll go out and they'll think, well, maybe there's something bigger here. Maybe it's something different. Just how you treat. I knew it. We said we weren't going to give total examples. I knew it had hit me when I was working for a company. Worked for like 8 years. I was a contractor. I wasn't even an employee. Sat on their board, did all sorts of great stuff with them. Fantastic company. Love them to death. Everybody thought I was an employee. I wasn't. God had placed me there. Years later, I have married and I have buried. I led the faith people at that company. It started when somebody said to me, there's something different about you. In the workplace. It was because when we were doing a campaign or marketing campaign, I can't remember what it was. It doesn't matter. I looked at it differently. I looked at it with an honor. I wasn't going to, you can always take the low road, for the money or for the profitability or the short term or to knock out your competitor. Well, geez, yeah, you want to beat your competitor in the best excellence you can, but not to hurt that person, because that person has employees. That person has a family possibly. They need the money. So how do you look at competition now changes it literally changes your entire view. And when somebody said, wow, you're different. That was probably almost 30 years ago. That's how old I am. Mm-hmm. But that stuck with me. That said, okay, I am here for a different reason. And that's when I went out and started doing why we're here.
So we have this biblical journey.
Yep.
Work was a part of, it was good, part of creation. The fall came,
Yep.
distorted
Yep.
work.
That's
It
right.
becomes labor in so many ways. Mm-hmm. And now we see the element of Christ, the truths and realities of redemption. So
That's
we're
right.
attempting on a daily basis, redeem who we are. Okay, let's talk about what's to come, because I think this is a part of a detail that a lot of people either don't think of or they have a misconception of. And so when Christ does return, and
Yes.
we're not talking about end times theology here, that could be a whole different podcast or a series of podcasts, but we know that at some point in time, Christ will ultimately have his entire kingdom.
That's right.
And it will be earthly, it'll be physical. We won't be the Michelin babies floating on clouds or anything like that.
Nope.
And there will be an element of work in the
Absolutely.
forevers.
In the forevers, absolutely. And
it's connected to worship.
it is, because now we go back to why we were originally created. The whole cycle comes around again, right? I like to tell love to tell people the Bible should have only been 2 books long, right? And then a guy stood behind a woman and said absolutely nothing. And you need 66 more of them. God knew that. He knew the process. He knew what he was going to do for his son. He knew what he was going to do for us, because he loved us so much that sacrifice to be in unity and worship constantly for an eternity. I get pretty excited about that. But it's really important. If we look at the Lord's Prayer, as heaven on earth, that heaven on earth will come here someday. There will be no earth and heaven. The heavenlies will come down, and it will all be redeemed. That's why not only did he die for me, but he died for all the creation that he started in Genesis 1 on day 1.
So as much as that's coming, because we can't live there, there's that tension. It's
We
not yet there.
we live in that tension today. That's right.
It's probably good for us to have the reminder that
Yes.
when we work
Yes.
and the frustrations come,
And they do come.
and they will, that we need to make sure, and here's the redemptive element, that what we are going through, we don't individualize or make selfish these thoughts. We
Right.
make sure to filter everything through a gospel lens, a redemptive theme, because we need to recognize this is what we need to journey through, and we redeem our response to these frustrations.
That it absolutely is the redeeming relationship and the rhythms of that. Before you give yourself a shameless plug, we go back to 1 Peter, and right now, when this airs, we're in 1 Peter 2. We just finished that up, but we had that. He's given us the example of submitting to authority and submitting to, just as Christ submitted in worship to Father to redeem us. We have to hold that on there. So, I'm loving 1 Peter. And if you go to even when we jump ahead to 1 Peter 4, and we're all uniquely given gifts of which to share with one another, that can be our work too. Our gift can be whether we're a great cabinet maker, whether we know how to sell a lot of real estate or make a lot of money. We've all met people that are incredibly wealthy and great Christians. You say, well, why? Well, maybe just because God's trusted that person more. Sometimes it's just the opposite. Maybe they're tempted too much with it, right? But there is an opportunity to worship, and all those gifts that we are given in 1 Peter 4:10, I think it is, we'll come to. The thing about, I want to bring back a second, I was trying to find exactly the note I had, because there's a great word here. But when we look at our stewardship, the sanctification of that stewardship responsibility that's part of our sanctification process, and how we work out in the workplace, in the marketplace. When people say, well, what do you talk about? I think I opened it up with the marketplace, and I always use the example of the at-home mom or dad that's a homeschooler. That's marketplace. Because that homeschooler probably has other homeschoolers, and they're homeschooling together in a community. And then people look at their children and all of that. That's marketplace ministry, right? It's just, we have a tendency to put it to nuts and bolts and working in business. It's so much more broad to that. Literally, the minute we walk out of this church on Sunday, we're in the marketplace. If you're going to go to the Waffle, I go to Waffle House every Sunday after your sermon. It makes me so hungry. I go to the Waffle House every Sunday, and we are friends with probably half of the people that are in there. I had one person walk out and say, "Do you own this one?" You're like, "No, everybody here." But that's the fragrance we leave. That's how we communicate, because they're providing a service to me, and how I react to that service is just as important.
Well, I love the Waffle House Christian church mentality. By the way, the church is much like Waffle House. We're gathered, then scattered. So very quickly, one last topic that we want to address regarding work is there's also an element of rest. We don't just work, and work, but there is a good aspect in our redeemingness of work. There's rest.
That's right. If God could rest on the seventh day, in reference to working twice in that same verse, using that word twice in the same verse, it is important. So what do? We rest. Maybe we watch UT game. That's one way to rest.
Well, or do we rest? Depends on which Saturday you're watching.
Or do we rest on a Sunday when we come in and we heard the rear preach? Because now my mindset, this is key, right? So in the Avodah concept here, in the worship side of things, rest is important, because we have to go back to the Word of God. We have to go back and hear the teaching, the edification of it, seeing that happen. Part of that rest is absolutely part of the worship. And God modeled that exactly on the seventh day.
Because rest, just in essence of what it is a trust.
It's a trust
in God.
That's right.
Now I want to be very clear. Rest doesn't equate to doing nothing or complete and absolute laziness.
No.
There may be great applications to how some people rest compared to other people. But the component that is a must when we talk about the work aspect is there's also rest.
Absolutely. That's good. And that is a very good thing, and we need to rest. If God needed to rest, we better. And yes, there are times where we're going to work 7 days a week, and we're going to work 80 hours, and those will happen. But at some point, you have to rest. And that's it.
Okay, Christian, we've talked about a lot of things. I've got 3 kind of concluding statements.
Yes, sir.
Agree, disagree, comment on them. How about that?
Okay. Shoot.
All right, you ready? Number 1, excellence in the workplace or marketplace ministry. Excellence is evangelism.
Yes. Agree. 100% agree.
Okay. Secondly.
But by the way.
Okay, comment.
Yeah, I got to comment on that one. I keep looking for old, antique stores, find an old table, pick it up, and hoping to see like Jesus of Nazareth, signed on the bottom of that. I'm sure everything that as a carpenter, whether he was a roofer or a cabinet maker or whatever, I don't really know what he was, but I guarantee you it was with excellence.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine having a Jesus table.
I don't know if I like that illustration.
Okay.
Because then I have to think that through personally, thinking, do my sermons get anywhere near Jesus' sermons? Oh, that's a bad illustration for me. Okay, moving on.
I didn't say that. But I agree.
Number 2.
Excellence is important.
Excellence is evangelism. Honesty and humility reveal holiness.
100%. 100% agree.
So within the marketplace ministry, within the things that we're doing in our missional lifestyles, our integrity, our honesty, our humility, our character about us. And I think even if we go back to that Avodah aspect, there's an internal character detail that's implied through the use of that term.
One of those elements is serve, right? Meaning of the word is serve. So how do I serve other people? I can give honest feedback. I can give honest criticism. I can be honest in what I'm charging. All of those things are absolutely imperative. Also goes back to your, 1 Peter 2, in how we are set aside as exiles in this world. We are set aside as holy, and that's important, and it shows up in that honesty and integrity, who your character is.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the third one. I
got 2 agrees so far.
2 agrees, and you may agree with this one. I don't know, but this one is really personal to me because I'm the kind of guy within my work. I've got a schedule.
Yep.
I've got a routine.
Yep.
I've got a rhythm.
Yep.
And I function really well in that schedule, rhythm, and routine. And if that schedule, rhythm, and routine breaks or is changed, I crumble. So some people will appreciate that, and some people have no concept of what I just said. So here may be the third one that's much more for me personally. Interruptions are invitations.
Agree. And it's hard for people to do that. When I sit down and I coach individuals, a lot of times what I'll do is people just don't have enough time. They've got their schedule. I've got to get the sermon ready, or I've got to get this presentation and deck put together, or I'm meeting with the board, or whatever, and I can't be interrupted. And I have my routine that I do this, this, and this for these days. If that's how we are going to live in our mindset, we miss the opportunity that God may throw in the middle of something. So I coach people saying, well, you can time box, set your times, and turn your phone off, and that's what you do. But you always have to be in a mindset where you're going to open to hear the Holy Spirit, right? So I coach a lot on listening and listening skills, and one of those is having that intuition and the Holy Spirit intuition on that. Sometimes it's not just when I'm listening to the person, it's when I got to listen to myself and say, shoot, I really needed to go talk to John today, and felt that. And yeah, you got to get that done. But you know what? God wants you to go over there and have that conversation.
Yeah.
So as hard as it is for personalities like yourself
Yes.
to recognize that, if you do stick to that, I'm not saying you do all the time, but if you are so hard fast in that, you just may miss an opportunity and a blessing that God wants to do through you.
I know, and I agree, and that's so hard because I even schedule to be spontaneous.
All right, excellent.
So here's what we're going to land this plane a little bit. We've got work connected to worship.
Absolutely.
And that is a must for Christians.
Must.
There is, in the salvific work of Christ, he saves, putting us on this journey of redemption, sanctification, and a part of that is our work.
Right.
So we need to learn, and it's a struggle, it takes time, but we need to learn to make our work become our worship.
Perfect. And when I talk about Avada, work as a product, do it with excellence. Serve others, do it with excellent humility and all that. But both of those fall under the umbrella of worship, because that's how we were created to worship. If we don't get that part right, then no matter how excellent we work or how hard we try to serve, if we're not doing it from a worship mindset, then those other two get washed out, and then you don't get the completeness of what God tried to communicate in the word Avada.
That's good.
Thank you.
Christian, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you
for your time. Church members, folks at Fairview, don't forget, Christian's name will be on the December members meeting, membership details. So this is a membership
Vote
interview.
Often. Vote often.
And whatever you thought about Christian, don't hold that against Elizabeth. So, Christian,
don't hold it against Elizabeth. That's exactly right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Church family, appreciate you tuning in. And until next time, God bless.